Okay, I'm starting with Miss Ladine. Can I have you count off by 5, please? And we'll go around this way.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. Can I have the ones sit at that table? 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. And you'll eventually need a piece of paper and a pencil. Okay, so my activity does have some group work later on, and I just kind of wanted to mix up the class a little bit because I know some of the previous lessons we've kind of been working with the same people, so I think that good mix of ideas, different heads put together, will be really good for our activity. So, my name is Ms. Stipetich, and my lesson today is on the constructive approach to teaching. And I'm going to start off first off with a video that kind of just gives you an overview of what it is. I think it's just a couple minutes, and it's a song actually. So. What's going on? There we go.
The individual is where we start. Essentially, the most important part. Individuals are information constructors. What they construct depends on culture, perspectives. Each one is unique. All our minds have a different peak. What is it we want to seek? The is shaped invention, assimilation, and accommodation is how we process information. Assimilation to information that doesn't change without foundation. But with accommodation, there can be frustration. With an invention of new information as you learn your misconceptions. The individual is where we start. Essentially, the most important part. But then again, we're not alone on this planet that we call home. As learners, we make up a community. Teachers, peers, most important foundation. We construct our knowledge socially. When I teach you, you teach me. Our experiences construct our knowledge and determine our long-term storage. Centered around individual learning, constructing meaning, and understanding. Teachers within our society are parts of the learning community. We need to make learning meaningful and explain how the pieces fit into the whole. A teacher facilitates. A teacher can motivate. A teacher collaborates. A teacher can investigate. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Discovery, following, cooperation. The individual is where we start. Essentially, the most important part. The classroom environment should be designed with the learner kept in mind. Create a classroom where the students explore and it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. Centered around individual learning, constructing meaning, and understanding. The individual is where we start. Essentially, the most important part.
So that's just like an overview, kind of give you a couple characteristics of what constructivism is. I can go back to my PowerPoint. So the actual definition of constructivism, it's an approach that considers learning as an act of making or constructing, obviously constructivism, of meaning from experiences and observations. It's a very active process, which is inquiry-based, and it's student-centered, so the teacher's not going to stand up here and dictate to you exactly what you should know and learn. The student brings forth prior knowledge. They're all about bringing that old knowledge and creating new knowledge, or changing their misconceptions they might have. Students share their experiences and learn from each other. There's lots of group work, whether it's just with one other person, a group of 4, or you split the class right in half and you work that way. It's very much student to student rather than the teacher to student relationship. Mistakes are opportunities to seek more information, try different strategy, or explore new ways of teaching. So mistakes are favored. It's a very process-based approach to teaching. It's important for children to pose questions, formulate hypotheses, gather data, and like I said, they're always connecting old information with new information and changing their information they already know. The teacher's role in this approach, the teachers help pose and ask clear questions. They're more of a guider or a facilitator. They support a creative environment. They create those learning centers for students to learn what they would like to learn. They construct activities so students can control the development of their own learning. So it's all about what the student wants to learn, how they want to learn it, with the teacher just as a guide or a supporter for them. Here's some examples of some things that might happen in a classroom that uses this approach. Experimentation, for example, where students experiment, followed by group discussion. Research projects, students research and present findings to their class. Field trips, where students can see real-world context. And films give them that visual experience. And then in this approach, class discussions are the most important because that's how they learn from each other rather than just from the teacher. And then the handout that I did have in the back for you is more or less for your knowledge. I thought it really laid it out pretty well. If you didn't get one, there is one in the back if you needed it all. But it kind of gives you a list of some of the characteristics that are just traditional pedagogy, but then lists what the constructivist approach would have. And I just wanted to highlight a few things. Just that, again, the teachers facilitate discussions and mediate the environment, and they seek the student's point of view. So it's all about what the students are interested in, what they would like to learn. Assessment is interwoven with and reinforces teaching, so it's more or less not paper, pencil, what did you learn, make sure you learned it this way. And then students often work and interact in various groups. And then on the flip side of that sheet, I just thought was a good visual, gives some characteristics of social constructivism, sharing ideas. Guide on the side is referring to the teacher yet again, interactive learning, and students constructing their own knowledge. So I thought that was just kind of a good overview of what exactly constructivism is for you to have. Now my other video is kind of going to be an example of what we're going to do in class. It's going to show you Teacher Tony, who's the guy in the red shirt. He's trying to get his class more involved, and he decides, or the class decides as a whole. They come up with a question that they want to learn about, and then he kind of gives some examples of what they did to learn about that topic. So it's a good overview of what exactly it would look like in a classroom. And so we're going to do that later on, too. So this is an example for you first, though.
I'm not real sure how you tell somebody thank you for a degree, but I'm going to keep working on it.
I saw the email from Catherine regarding the scholarship. Brad came right to mind. Every little bit of change that comes from
Meet Teacher Tony. Teacher Tony is having difficulty engaging his students in learning about resource sustainability and waste. His current curriculum doesn't build communication and collaboration skills or promote critical thinking and problem solving. He feels his students are passive participants in the learning process. Teacher Tony needs help.
I can't get my students to learn higher order thinking skills and problem solving.
Why don't you use constructivism to help transform your teaching so that students are actively engaged with problem solving in meaningful contexts?
What's constructivism?
Constructivism is a learning theory that equates learning with creating meaning from experience.
Huh?
Learning is more meaningful to students when they are able to interact with a problem or concept. Constructivism can help engage and motivate your students by making them take on a more active role in the learning process. Constructivism utilizes interactive teaching strategies to create meaningful contexts that help students construct knowledge based on their own experiences.
Huh?
You've probably seen constructivism at work and didn't even know it. Constructivism is often used to teach higher order thinking skills such as reasoning and problem solving, while also helping students transfer their knowledge to new and different situations. Common examples of constructivism include role-playing or simulating a historical event or time period, debating controversial current event issues and topics, utilizing cooperative learning groups to teach multiple perspectives, and allowing students to engage in real-world activities like internships. Now let's see if we can apply the principles of constructivism to help solve Teacher Tony's problems. First, Teacher Tony must decide how to actively engage his students in the topic. Teacher Tony decides to utilize the idea of problem-based learning to actively engage his students by challenging them to answer a real-world problem. Teacher Tony came up with the following essential question.
How can we reduce waste to help sustain Earth's resources?
Teacher Tony planned the following activities to help students answer the essential question. First, students will tour a local waste and recycling plant to learn firsthand how waste and recycling materials from their community are handled. Next, students will weigh and record how many pounds of food scraps their family puts into the regular trash each day. Then in groups, students will further research solutions to the problems in books, on the internet, and by interviewing experts around their community and the country using the telephone and Skype. Finally, the student groups will determine how they want to demonstrate their solutions to the essential question. Examples might include student-created books, slideshows, and public service announcements about recycling and the 4 R's. These learning artifacts could be displayed to members of the community and parents at a family recycling night. After implementing these principles of constructivism, Teacher Tony's students are more actively involved in their learning by engaging in problem solving, higher order thinking skills, and collaborative work.
Using constructivism really helped engage my students.
If you're wanting to build problem solvers,
Okay, so for example, in his classroom, they posed a question, and the question was about waste. And then he took the kids on a field trip to their local waste management company, or whatever you'd like to call it. And then they did an experiment at their own house where they weighed the waste, very hands-on activity. Then they came back, they had some class discussions, group discussions, and then they presented their findings to the class. So that's kind of an example of how the constructivist approach will be used in the classroom. So we're going to pretend now that you're not college students and that you're elementary students, maybe 3rd or 4th grade. We already came in and we had a discussion on signs of spring, for example. And we've decided as a class that we're the most interested in flowers, which we have not seen any yet, of course. But so we're the most interested in flowers. So now what we're going to do to learn more about flowers is we're going to do a KWL. Is there anybody who does not know what a KWL is? Okay, it's a chart, like what Dr. Masterson has used, I think, earlier in the semester, where you create a list of everything that you know about a topic, everything that you want to know, and then once you're done learning, you're going to write everything that you've learned. So right now we're going to focus on what you know and what you want to know. So as 3rd or 4th grade students, in your groups, I'd like you to create a list of just a couple, maybe 3 or 4 things that you know about flowers, and 3 or 4 things maybe that you would want to know. It can be a question, it can be just a statement as to something that you want to know, completely up to you, but just list a couple things that you know and want to know, and then you're going to choose one thing that you know, one thing that you want to know, and you're going to report that back to the class. And we're going to create a class list up here. Are there any questions? Okay, so I'll give you just a couple minutes to discuss that in your groups. And you're 3rd and 4th grade students, so you don't know that there's a pistol and whatever the parts of flower. You don't know that kind of stuff if you're like 3rd or 4th grade. 4th grade.
Some of them come back and like,
Well, they do know that. sun.
I guess I
That's what I would say if I were Once you've made a little list, I want you to pick one thing that you decided that you know and one that you want to know that you want to share with the class.
As a fourth grade.
Raise your hand if you need more time. Any group need more time? Okay, we'll start with group number 1 over here. What is something that you want to know about the topic of flowers?
Thinking at a 3rd or 4th grade level.
Of course.
Where do flowers go when winter hits?
So that's a want to know? Or do you know that?
Oh, they're colorful.
They're colorful? Okay. And then what's your want to know?
Where they go when winter hits.
Okay, group number 2. What is one thing that you know?
They smell good.
And then one thing that you would like to know?
When do they go when winter hits? Do they go in winter? The first one?
When?
Where?
Oh, hot. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Why do they smell good?
Why do they smell good? Okay, group 3. What would you like to know? Or what do you know already? Sorry.
They are plants.
And then want to know?
Can you eat them?
Group 4.
Butterflies like them.
And want to know?
We want to know how they open.
And last but not least.
They make me sneeze.
Whoops. And then want to know?
What do they eat or how do they grow?
Okay, so now that we've created a list of what we already know, so we're using that prior knowledge, like a constructivist approach does, is using that knowledge that we already know. Now we've gained some questions that we maybe would want to know or want to research. So now in your groups, the question that you pick to share in your groups, I want you to think like how a constructivist would and decide what you're going to do as students or how you would like to learn your answer to that question. So whether it's going on a field trip somewhere, like teacher Tony did, took them to the waste management company, or whether they did something hands-on at their own house, in the classroom. And I want you to share what you decided to do in your class.
Yeah, and it's because we don't necessarily know.
We ask why
Well, as the students would figure out how they would like to learn about that. You know what I mean? Like, so if a student, for example, wants to go to a greenhouse, I'm sure but it's what the student wants to do.
We're not trying to find out the answer, we're trying to find out the like.
No, you don't necessarily have to know the answer. Yeah.
Oh, so we can still do it, we can be in a
Does that make sense? study group need more time? Are you ready to discuss what we decided? Okay, we'll start with group 5 first. Group 5, your question was how do they eat and how do they grow? Or no, what do they eat? Is that yours?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and explain to us in a constructivist view what you decided students to do.
Well, we wanted to plant a few flowers, and as the kids, we were just thinking in like third grade level, we'd give some sunlight, some no sunlight, give some water, and then just like throw in random food like Cheetos and bacon bits, just to see what they like feed off of and which ones like flourish better, and kind of understand the teacher being like, okay, so what did we learn? Oh, they need sunlight and water, and that's how they, yeah, they don't eat like people, they eat like light.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's that experimenting and then with the teacher as the guide to guide them in the right direction and help them answer their own question. Awesome. Group 4. Yours was how do they open?
Yeah, we decided, I guess, all of us could get our own plant and then grow it and kind of watch it how it does. Or we go on a field trip to a greenhouse for that.
Cool. Field trips are always awesome. Group 3. How do they smell? Why do they smell good?
No, we asked, can you eat them?
Oh, sorry.
And,
Sorry, can you eat them?
We were going to experiment at first, but we decided it probably was bad. Just not enough children to get through it. So we came up with, we would either Google it up or field trip to a greenhouse or do some research in the library.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Group 2. Now you are why do they smell good?
We could go on a field trip to a greenhouse and see botanists or go to the library to research it.
Good. Group 1. Where do they go when winter hits?
We basically thought that, like, as third graders, maybe we could try to recreate it. And, like, we're all friends, and when the summer's going by, so we have freezers.
Awesome. So lots of experimenting, a couple different field trips. So that's kind of, and it's all about the students, what the students want to do. So if I was the teacher, I just asked what you guys would want to do, how you would want to do it, and as long as it's not like eating flowers that are maybe poisonous, I would be okay with it. So that's kind of an example of what we would do. And obviously once we did those different things or went on those field trips or whatever, we would fill in the learn section as to what we learned about that topic. But obviously we don't really know, so we're not going to fill that in right now. Now I'd like you to...
Could I just
Yes.
interrupt you for a moment? Could you go back to that slide?
Yes.
One of the challenges that comes up, and of course, because you're at a higher developmental level than third or fourth graders would be, you have experiences that you could draw upon and say, here's how I go investigate it. But even with younger children, how can you eat them? You can go back and keep using K and W and K and W. So can you eat them? Well, what do you already know about plants that you can eat? So they can identify that. What do you want to know? And then the what do you want to know question, well, what do you already know about that? So you can help your kids or your learners further distill it down to a really practical question that then they can decide, how am I going to get the answer to that? So if you run into that problem, you can continue to use multiple iterations of that KW step of this, KW else. So we'll teach them to.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, before I go on to my feedback form, does anybody have any questions for me on constructivism at all? Okay, now for my feedback, I'd like you to get out a piece of paper, please. And my 2 goals for today were to describe the constructivist approach to teaching and explain and describe what a classroom would look like if it were based on this approach. So then on your piece of paper, I first want you to describe the approach and what it looks like, and then decide whether you think it's a transmissive or a transformative purpose. And if you could put your names on these, please, because I'm going to collect them.